So for this final part, I think we are going to be displaying the detail of each of the cocktail displayed on the recycler view. So next, we are going to be closing this. So next, we will be focusing on our detail fragment. So now we are going to be creating a detail fragment view model. We'll be extending the view model. And of course, we are going to be, the view model class will be needing our repository. So next we'll be creating a method get drinks detail. We're going to be needing an ID of each drink that we select. As usual, try. We'll be using the view model scope to launch repository dot drink details ID dot drinks catch exception. We are going to try to log, just maybe we get any exception. So for that, let's create a tag. Okay. So next, let's create the live data. Drinks detail live data. This time we'll be displaying a list of drink detail. So let's create a getter method, since we won't want to be able to change our to be able to access our mutable live data from outside of this view model. Well, so next, we are going to assigning this response to our drinks detail live data dot value, and Next, we are going to be okay, I think that is it so far. So next, let's create our detailed view model factory. We are going to be passing in the repository so we can be able to initialize our view model, which also has the repository passed into the constructor. We'll be extending the view model provider.factory. Just like the name says, it's going to be providing the view model for the UI that needs it. So here we are going to be checking if model class dot is assignable from detail view model, then return detail view model, then return detail view model repository, as T. Okay, else should throw an error, illegal argument exception, unknown class. Okay, so now our detail view model factory is ready. Let's go over to detail fragment and create our main view model and create our detail view model. So just like we did in the main view model, we're going to be saying private view model, detail view model. Oh, sorry. I was wondering why it's not giving me detail view model by lazy. View model provider. This detail view model factory. Repository. API dot API service dot detail view model class dot java. Okay. Oh, okay. This is the same thing as saying dot get. This is the same thing as this. So okay. So next we are going to be using the view model. View model dot get drinks detail. So remember we need to pass in an ID in this drinks detail. And to get this ID, it needs to come from each item, ID of each item selected from the list of drinks. So how do we get this ID? We should go back to our adapter and create a click listener. We're going to be creating a lambda method as a listener, private var listener. We'll be needing our drink. It's going to be returning a unit. Okay. Next, in our here we can say binding dot root dot view, root dot set on click listener. So inside the on click listener, what we should do, we should say listener dot invoke drink. So here we are setting up a listener for our adapter. First, we created this lambda method as a listener, and we are passing in drink, which is the data we need from the adapter. And then here in the on click listener, we invoke the listener, passing in the drink. Okay, so in our first, so for us to be able to get this drink detail in our main view model, we need to, once an item is clicked, we need to pass the ID from the main fragment to the detail fragment while navigating. And to do that, okay, this is a lambda method, and therefore we need to access it from outside of the class. Okay, to explain this better, first, this is supposed to be a second parameter from the main adapter. Since we passed it in as the second parameter here. But it's a lambda, as you can see here, it says lambda argument should be moved out of parentheses. So it's better off outside of here. So what we're going to be doing in this listener is to once we click on it, we should pass in our value while navigating into the detail fragment. But first, we need to create this argument in the nav graph, in the main nav graph. And that is what we actually have here. Here we are going to be passing an argument, which we can actually do by clicking here, adding the name of the argument. You can call it ID, then selecting the type, which is string, and then if you add a default, you can either add a default value or not. But here we don't want a default value. So once you click add, okay, because we have already created an argument here, that's why it's telling us that we need to change the name of this argument. So we don't need it anyways. We already have what we need here. Okay, let's just recreate it. First, you have to click on the fragment. Click on the fragment that is going to be receiving that argument. Then you click on the plus sign. You can name it ID. You select string because our ID is a string. Then you click on add, and it automatically creates our argument for us here. So then going back, okay, I think first need to sync so that this can reflect, because it has to be automatically generated. So going back to the main fragment, we have to create a companion object. This companion object, we have to create an ID that we are going to use in passing these bundles from the main fragment to the detail fragment. So here we can say require view dot find nav controller dot navigate you can call the ID r.id dot dot action main fragment to detail fragment, and then we can pass in bundle of So this bundle of is the method we can use in passing data. We are passing data from the main fragment to the tail fragment, and this bundle of requires two value, the key and the value. The key is used in representing that value, so that whenever you want to call that value, you have to use that key to call it. So our key is going to be this, and we're going to be passing the drink ID. Okay, required per string any found string. Okay. What exactly is happening here? Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Hmm. Okay. Oh, okay. So we need to pass this ID. We need to pass this value to this key. So now what we are doing here is we are navigating into the detail fragment, carrying this ID together, so that when we get into the detail fragment, we receive it here. Oh, sorry. So here, we're going to be receiving this ID. So we are going to be to receive this ID in the detail fragment, we call arguments.let. I'm passing this ID because here we said ID equals to it.getString. This key, we are using this key to get the string the value is passing in. Like this is the same key we use in getting the value. Then to receive it in the detail fragment, we are using the same key to receive it. So after that, then we need to call this observer method, our view model dot drinks detail live data dot observe this comma observer. Okay, so we need to create a list here. You can call it private var list drinks detail. It was a mutable list of mutable list of drink detail. So what we need to do here is say drinks detail dot add all of it. Okay, so outside of there we can say binding dot instruction test view, instruction test view dot test equals drinks detail dot drink. Okay, drinks detail dot instruction. Then you can say below the image you can say dot thumbs image view dot load. you can load in the drinks detail, dot sorry. So something else that okay. Also, we need to set our name to set the name of each drink to the toolbar, and to do that, since the toolbar is the activity toolbar, so we are going to be saying activity dot title dot we're going to be saying activity dot title equals detail drinks detail dot drink name. So what exactly are we doing here? Now we have fetched we are observing this live data from the detail fragment view model. Now observing this live data, and to get each of these instructions, remember in the endpoint here, each each the endpoint will have a list of data, a list of objects, and since this object has only entirely one list, and each list we start counting a list from 0, and each detail has just one list, so we need to use 0 to get each of the we need to use 0 as the first item in a list to get each of the value that we need from it. So I think we might be done. So now we need to test and see if we are done. So now we are testing our app. For some reason, I don't know why our list is not displaying. Let's run again. Okay, let's go back to our main fragment and see if we are missing something. We are trying to run our app here, and for some reason it's not to be properly displaying. So now when we run the app, and you click on each item, it goes into the details screen. Click on each item, it goes into the details screen. Click on each item, it goes into the details screen. Okay, so let's go over what we have done here in this video. So what we have done, let's go over everything we have done again. We created an API class which has the base URL for the endpoint we want interacting with. A get method to fetch data from using Retrofit. We use the get method to fetch data from the internet. Here we have a value, a query value, which we pass in using the @query retrofit method, passing in the value for each of the URL, A for this and I for the second one. Then we created a response each that looks exactly like what we have here. We created an endpoint to represent what we have on the API. We created a model class to represent what we have here on the endpoint. And then we created a repository class to communicate to act as an intermediary between the API service and the view model classes. Then we created view model for each. We created a view model for each fragment. So this view model, in the view model, we are using a view model scope, part of the coroutine class, to ensure that once this class is destroyed, that we don't have any memory leak lying around. And also we created the main view model factory to help us create our view model classes. Since we have a parameter passed into our view model constructor, this view model provider.factory helps us to provide the view model to the classes that need them. And then in the main fragment, we initialize the view model by calling the main view model factory, passing in the repository and the API service, which we set up as a singleton using the objects class. The same thing we did here in the detail class. And in the nav graph, when we click on each item from the main fragment to view the details in the detail fragment, we need to pass an ID into the detail fragment so that the view model method getting the response from the API service can get an ID passed to it to enable it to observe and fetch the data. So we have come to the end of this video. Thank you for watching.